So, yesterday I found out the real reason my parents divorced, and the way my dad discovered it is honestly so ridiculous that when he told us, my sister and I just stared at him like, there's no way that actually happened. But the craziest part isn't even the cheating. It's that once I heard the full story, suddenly my entire childhood started looking different. Like, every memory I have now comes with this weird question in the back of my mind. Was any of it actually real? And the thing that exposed the truth? It started with the police showing up at my dad's house. Yeah, I know. Let me explain. So I'm 16, and my parents officially divorced when I was 13, but honestly the relationship had been falling apart for years before that. Growing up, our house always felt tense, like something could explode at any moment. Sometimes things were calm, but then suddenly there'd be yelling, doors slamming, stuff getting thrown across the room, and sometimes it got physical. Usually my mum was the one who escalated things, which always confused me because she can also be incredibly kind, like the type of person who will bake cupcakes at midnight just because someone had a bad day. She's one of those people who can be warm and supportive one minute, and then suddenly explode the next. My dad is kind of the opposite. He can be blunt, sarcastic, sometimes a little harsh, but when it came to actually being a parent, he always showed up. Homework help at the kitchen table, driving us places, making sure I took my medication when my bipolar episodes got bad. So yeah, their relationship wasn't exactly healthy, but the moment everything really broke apart happened on a day that still feels surreal when I think about it. Christmas. Actually, Christmas Day, and what happened that morning is still burned into my memory. The house smelled like cinnamon candles and pine from the tree, wrapping paper everywhere on the floor. My sister and I were sitting there with our new gifts, when suddenly my mum started packing bags. At first I thought maybe she was going somewhere for the day, but then she just kept packing, and eventually she walked out, on Christmas. At the time, it didn't even shock me as much as you'd think. Their relationship had already been so chaotic for years that it almost felt inevitable, but what happened after she moved out is where things start getting strange. Because a few months later, someone new suddenly appeared in our lives, and looking back now, that timing feels very suspicious. For the first couple months after the separation, my sister and I stayed with my dad. Life actually felt quieter than usual. Not perfect, but calmer. Then, around February, we moved in with my mum again. She had this tiny apartment, 2 bedrooms, barely any space in the kitchen, the kind of place where you can hear someone open the fridge from across the apartment. And not long after we moved in, she introduced us to someone. I'll call him Daniel. And honestly, Daniel seemed almost too perfect. Calm voice, patient, the type of adult who actually listens when you talk instead of just pretending to. He also had 2 kids around the same age as us, and somehow we all got along immediately. Movie nights, board games, dumb arguments about which pizza topping is best. After a while, it didn't even feel like step-siblings. It just felt like siblings. My mum always told us she and Daniel had been friends for years, like this long-time friendship that slowly turned into something more. And at the time I believed her, but now, knowing what I know, that explanation feels very different. Because around the same time Daniel started appearing more often, something else in my life started getting worse, and it completely changed my relationship with my mum. Around that time, though, things between me and my mum started getting really bad. Like, not just normal arguments. I remember one night we were in the kitchen arguing about something stupid. I honestly don't even remember what it was anymore. Probably chores or homework or something like that. And suddenly she just snapped. 1 second we're yelling, The next, she shoves me hard enough that I bump into the counter behind me. I remember the sound of one of the glasses rattling on the countertop and thinking, did that really just happen? And the weirdest part is what she said right after. She just looked at me and goes, "You're exactly like your father." Not in a normal way either, like it was an accusation, like somehow that explained everything. And after that, it started happening more. Not constantly, but enough that I started bracing for it whenever an argument got too heated. Sometimes it was just yelling, sometimes it was a shove or a slap. And every single time she'd say the same thing, that I reminded her too much of my dad. At some point I started fighting back during arguments, which obviously only made things explode even worse. But the part that still messes with my head the most is something else she convinced me to do. She talked me into calling CPS on my dad, twice. At the time, she made it sound like he was dangerous, like we needed to protect ourselves. And when someone you trust keeps repeating something over and over, eventually you start believing it. So I did it. Looking back now, I feel awful about that. Meanwhile, my dad and I were both struggling a lot mentally during that period. He was dealing with depression, and my bipolar episodes were getting more intense too. Everything just felt chaotic all the time. But eventually life sort of settled into this weird routine. My mum had Daniel. We had this blended family thing going on. My sister and I were switching houses every week. From the outside, it probably looked like everything had worked itself out, like the drama was finally over. But yesterday something happened that completely blew everything open again. And it all started with one phone call. I was having a bad episode and got into a huge argument with my dad. You know those moments where emotions spiral and suddenly everything feels overwhelming at once? Yeah, it was like that. So I called my mum, crying. Apparently, one of my step-siblings overheard the call and thought something really serious was happening. They told their mum, Daniel's ex-wife, and she panicked. So she called the police. On my dad. A few minutes later, cops were standing at his door. Now, nothing actually happened. It was all a misunderstanding. But the situation forced a conversation that probably should have happened years ago, because after the police left, my dad sat my sister and me down in the living room. And I could tell immediately something was different. He had a folder in his hands, and the way he was talking, it felt like he had been waiting a long time to say something. That's when he showed us the divorce paperwork, and finally told us the real reason their marriage ended. Apparently, before my parents separated, there was a night where they were, together. And in the middle of it, my mum accidentally said another man's name, not my dad's, someone else's. Actually, 2 different names. The first time she said Jake. Another time she said Daniel. And here's the detail that made my stomach drop when he said it. About a year ago, my stepdad Daniel had a friend named Jake. That's how my dad realised what was happening. That's how he discovered she had been cheating. When he finished explaining everything, the room just went quiet. My sister and I looked at each other and both started crying. Not dramatic crying, just that quiet kind where you feel sick and numb at the same time. Because growing up, both of our parents always talked about cheating like it was the worst thing someone could do. And suddenly, we're realising the entire story we'd been told about their divorce wasn't even close to the truth. My mum had told us a completely different version of events. Now it feels like that entire explanation was just a lie. And once that realization hits, a lot of other things start making more sense. The manipulation, the way she turned us against our dad sometimes, the way she always framed herself as the victim. I even found out recently that her first marriage ended because of a gambling addiction. Something else nobody ever talked about. So now I'm just sitting here wondering who my mum actually is. Because when the truth finally came out, it didn't just change how I see her, it changed how I see my entire childhood. And honestly, I'm still trying to figure out what parts of it were actually real. Stories like this honestly make you question how well you really know the people around you. If you want to hear another one that's just as insane, check out the story on screen right now.